Alrighty, well, good morning once again to all of you there. We just wanted to get our data point out of the way, and as we can see, keeping things fairly contained. That was just our non-farm employment change. So, outside of that, as far as our calendar goes for today, we do have a handful of minor figures out at 8:30, just non-farm productivity, trade balance for Canada, not really as impactful there. But at 10 o'clock Eastern, at that morning inflection point for the first 30 minutes of the pit session, we do have the Bank of Canada rate statement and IV PMI there. So, mildly noteworthy. And then our crude number later on in the day at 10:30 Eastern. So, as far as the board goes, we're up to speed with our data and everything, housekeeping items, if you would. Then we'll come over here to jump into our daily charts. We know that we didn't have much shift really. We closed yesterday as an inside range bar, so and a bit of a doji bar to go alongside with that. So ended up settling in, fairly close to unchanged on the day. And obviously, as we could see overnight, the Globex session, we're coming in here currently doing some testing around our previous day's high. We had 45.85 half there as the PD high, and we tested above it briefly to 90 and a quarter in the Globex session. So a mild trade above the previous day's high, but as we know, we saw this, display yesterday as well on the market profile. The fact that we've been, maintaining ourselves in this bit of a range as of late. So even with that said, though, previous day's high will be a nice reference point for us at 85 half once again. And then, the 2-day high, or rather the 3-day high that we put in, of course, remains untested there. That's at 46.07. 75. We, tried to test it on the day following, but couldn't quite get up there. So we had left ourselves that 3-bar balance mode and then put in an inside range bar yesterday. So, bigger picture, spreading things out here on the daily, 46.0775 up above, of course, being a point of interest. And then down below, we have, pretty well built out consolidation. So all I have here is just the recent tail marked off since we had two data points there from the 28th as well as the last day of the trading month of November, so 44.75, tested on two separate occasions, so making that a valid point of interest for us. But as we can see for now, keeping things pretty contained there, just maintaining ourselves here on the daily bars. When we come over to the intraday charts, such as the hourly display of data, of course, also it's going to be very similar in the nature. So this 90 and a quarter up above here is just the Globex high, the overnight high that we had put in. This little tail zone being our previous day's high, so we can see we're kind of beating around that zone there just a notch. And we have all kinds of well-defined areas. As we know, this is also, we had the big volume node on the market profile display, so it'll be nice to kind of view that once again. And with that said, so 90 and a quarter is that Globex high that we put in overnight. There's the same, 97 up above in case we, do maintain and hold coming into the session. What we're really dealing with is just some consolidation here at the hourly moving average. So plenty of good reference points. 90 and a quarter is the overnight high and everything. And then the 77 and a quarter, right? We have also done several tests in that area. So kind of viewing that as being a little bit more of like a caution zone. If we were to come back beneath that zone, we could start to do some better work inside of those past 2 days range. But for now, keeping themselves maintained. Hard to really get too overly enthused since we are a little bit range bound still. So we'll certainly keep an eye, see what type of progress we get off of that opening, and if we get any urgency going on off that opening price and where we'll be set to open with respect to yesterday's pit session range. So that's there for our S&Ps. We got our DAX up here, of course, still the stud, superstar, if you would, on the top left. So having made not only new highs, but took out the previous day's high as well. So here with the DAX, all fine with that. We had our inside range bar, so we got our extension up from it, and good follow through overnight. The DAX almost working on back-to-back extended runs here. We have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 working on potentially day 7 in the case of the DAX future. So getting some nice trendiness. A little single time framing mode here on the dailies here. And the 5 SMA is quite a ways down there. That's at 16,481. So clearly we're doing a fairly decent job of keeping ourselves above that 5 SMA still there as far as the DAX goes. So not too shabby there. We'll keep a watch on those index futures as we go into our opening there. And then we have our euro currency. Oh Boy, oh boy, finally putting in a little bit more work, right? Filling in as we've been kind of watching here for the past, what feels like, the past 4 or 5 days, coming down and filling in our big, large expansion bar that we had to the upside. But very importantly here, we did come back finally to the 1.07745, the spike high that we had before, then taking it out with range expansion. So we've come back and we tested. Very close towards that area, 1.07770. So a couple, points shy on, fully retracting back to that previous point of interest in the euro currency. But if we come over here to the 120-minute display, it's going to show that same type of feeling here. Right, previous reaction high that we had here in the euro currency, right, before then taking it out with the impulse bar. So we filled in a good portion of the blanks, and we've just come down and essentially found some initial footing at this previous spike high, nice and visible there, so we can see that nice and well there for that EC. So those will be our kind of points that we'll want to consider there. And then watching, the 240 or 120-minute oscillator here in case it does start to firm up at all and give us any signs of feeling of the loss of momentum. But for now, we're just coming off of a test of a fresh data point there in the euro currency. So very interesting mover there, if you would, from overnight. Then we have the gold. The gold was another one that was interesting. We recall looking at the 120-minute display at the close yesterday, right, with our little hint of loss of momentum. So here with the gold, of course, we know we had shifted some of that upside momentum there with our big range expansion bar, our kind of wide range reversal feeling. So we did proceed to come down and we traded below the previous day's low, which was fine. Nothing wrong there. We have an inside bar overnight in the Globex session, right? 2056 is the daily 5 SMA up above. 2039.7 previous cycle high that we had in the gold, which we thus then, took out. So trading back at and around that region. And then as we come over here to the intraday charts, such as the 120-minute data, this is essentially kind of where we closed during yesterday's trading, right in this general vicinity. So we have been able to do a little better job of reverting back to the mean. So we've worked off some of this 120-minute buy divergence, if you would. And any further up from here, once again, you'd be dealing with the 5 SMA 2056, and then 2059.6 here, as we can see, kind of puts us in a little region back to where we were having that large pickup in steam and a little bit of the low developed zone there as far as the gold goes. So not too bad of a march there. Of course, what would change this whole line of thinking if we ended up breaching, the previous day's low, 2027, hence the yellow line to denote the caution there. But for now, clearly, holding above that level. So that's what we're working with there. And the gold should be a one to keep tabs on there today. And then the crude here. The crude, right, as we well know, we took out yesterday the 72.37. So we got that well out of the way. We even closed beneath that yesterday. So, having our kind of one-time framing mode here on the daily bars, taking out 72.37. If we blow this up in the crude here just a notch bigger, you can see you got one pretty serious built out previous trading range that we had put in there in the crude during our early summer months. So, big picture, we do have 5 days of high to low, but boy oh boy, you blow up the chart and you note as to where we're starting to trade back down into as far as the crude goes, a fairly wide previous congestion zone there. So, what we can do here, I think we already have it marked off, is this overnight low. Okay, it's shifted slightly, 71.33 there. Between that point and the 72.37, as far as any type of holding points there, and then outside of that, dropping any further down below, you'd be dealing with the 71 round figure, and then all this previous work that we had put in there with the crude. So those will be some kind of primary points there. And then once again, this is how it looks on the 240-minute display. Good impulse down, slightly lower lows, hence the, one time framing mode on the dailies. So we did a decent job of slicing through the 72.37, and for now we're keeping price pretty well contained beneath that point. So the crude, but we also have the EIA number there for the crude today. So they always like to shake things up a little extra there with the crude number. So we'll keep that in mind and see how that all goes. And then lastly here we have the bonds, which I can see the bonds are already giving a little bit of a early morning action there. We had, importantly, yesterday, remember, the expansion out of the inside range bar. So oftentimes out of our range expansion, we see at least an attempt to test towards the previous day's high on the following day, which we already got out of the way overnight. 119.17 was the previous day's high on the bonds. So we squeezed out a movement above it, so we have a higher high overnight. And you can see we kind of came in with this hourly flag type of feeling, so they're holding their own and maintaining their bid. We do have some low developed zones just from yesterday's markup, but as we can see for now, they're maintaining and not quite testing into those points. And then another thing, as you guys know, I like to always take a look at the yields, right? The 30 years in particular. And as we're coming back down, and the yields are going up in the bond futures, fill the gap well a while ago, coming down 4.3%, a bit of a round figure. And we can see it's not super well defined, but we did do some previous testing a little bit around this area, so 4.3%, a bit of a round figure that one could perhaps keep tabs on there if watching those bonds and yields. And then over here on the 10s for comparison, not too dissimilar. The 10 years were a little more, bring these over on the daily chart. We also had the inside range bar going into yesterday's session. A little less extended on their progress, with the extension outside of the inside range bar. So what we want to note on the 10s is that the notes haven't quite been able to trade above their previous day's high like we have already done in those 30 years. So we'll have that to consider there as well. And with that said, we'll dial it back here. We have, it's not going to be a very big one, but we have some mild 830 figures to take into account. So we'll let those run their courses there and see just as to what we have lining up for this morning session in front of us here. So I'm just going to bring over this either the gold or the euro currency here just on this lower left hand chart so we can keep tabs on those other groups there as well. So I will leave the gold up here. So we got the caution mark there, 2027, and then up above, once again, that 2059. So some nice regions there in the GC that we can keep watch on there. So let these points come out, and we'll be on our merry way here for this Wednesday in front of us.